On the morning of February 24th, 2023, a 39-year-old man named Joseph Ryan drove to a house he had never visited before in Herndon, Virginia. He was an ordinary man. He loved animals. He was close to his family. There was nothing about Joseph Ryan that marked him as anything other than a regular person living a regular life. He had been exchanging messages online for over a month with a woman who called herself Anastasia. She had reached out to him first. She was interested in him. She had described exactly what she wanted and where, and Joseph Ryan had no reason to doubt that any of it was real. So he drove to Herndon. He parked. He walked to the door. He was not walking into a date. He was walking into a murder scene that had been constructed specifically around him, a scene where his death had been planned weeks in advance, and his role had been decided before he ever sent his first message. Joseph Ryan never went home. This is the story of Brendan Banfield, a man who spent his career as a federal investigator catching criminals, who knew exactly how crimes were solved, and who believed that knowledge made him untouchable. A story about two people who did nothing wrong and died inside someone else's plan, and a story about a web of lies so calculated that the scheme had been running for nearly 5 months before the first body hit the floor. Brendan Banfield, 41, had built a life that looked exactly the way a life is supposed to look. He was a criminal investigator with the Internal Revenue Service, a federal law enforcement officer who followed money trails, built cases, and understood the mechanics of how people get caught. He and his wife Christine had been married for nearly 11 years. They had a 4-year-old daughter together. They owned a comfortable home in Herndon, a quiet suburb of Northern Virginia, the kind of neighborhood where people mow their lawns on weekends and wave at each other across the street. Christine Banfield was 37 years old. She was a pediatric intensive care unit nurse. Every shift she worked, she went in to fight for children who couldn't fight for themselves. She was, by every account, devoted to her patients, to her daughter, to the marriage she believed she was in. From the outside, it was an enviable picture. A stable family. 2 careers that mattered. A little girl growing up loved. Nobody looking at that house from the street would have had any reason to look harder. In October 2021, the Banfields hired a young Brazilian woman named Juliana Perez Magales to care for their daughter as a live-in au pair. She was 21 years old. She moved into their home. She became part of their daily life. By August 2022, Brendan Banfield was having an affair with her. He would later admit this on the witness stand. He said Juliana had initiated it, that Christine and their daughter had been out of town. Whatever the beginning looked like, what followed is not in dispute. The affair deepened, and as it did, Brendan Banfield began saying things that a man who simply wants out of a marriage does not say. He told Juliana he wanted to marry her. He wanted children with her. He had already been picking out names for those children. But there was a problem, and he was very clear about what it was. Divorce was not an option. If he divorced Christine, she would walk away with more money than he would. He would lose custody of his daughter. A clean separation was, to him, unacceptable. So, in the fall of 2022, he said something else entirely. He told Juliana he wanted to get rid of Christine. Juliana would later testify. At first, I thought he was joking. He was not joking. What began as words became logistics. Brendan Banfield needed a solution that was clean on paper. He needed Christine dead, and he needed someone else to take the blame. A stranger, an intruder, someone whose presence in the house would explain the violence, and whose death could be framed as a husband defending his family. He turned to FetLife, a social network for people with sexual fetishes. Working together, he and Juliana created a fake profile using Christine's own laptop. They named the account Anastasia9. For the profile photo, they went to Christine's Facebook, found a bathing suit selfie she had privately shared with her husband, downloaded it, edited it, and posted it as the face of a woman who did not exist. A woman built from Christine's image, used to destroy her. Anastasia was looking for a man willing to come to her home for a violent sexual encounter specifically, a scenario involving a knife. The encounter had to happen inside the Banfield house. Any candidate who suggested meeting elsewhere, or wanted to meet in person first, was rejected. The location was the entire point. They reviewed candidates for months. They were patient. They were methodical. A trained investigator designed this, and it showed. Eventually, they found Joseph Ryan. Banfield spent a full month building a relationship with him online, messaging, cultivating trust, making Ryan believe this was a real woman who genuinely wanted him. Ryan had no reason to suspect otherwise. He had no way to know that the man on the other side of those messages had a gun sitting in a safe in the same house he was being invited to visit. In January 2023, Banfield went and bought that gun. February 24th, 2023, the Banfield's 4-year-old daughter was home. Joseph Ryan arrived at the house that morning expecting the woman from the website. What he found instead was a scene already in motion. According to Juliana Perez Magalhaes, the only person in that house who would later stand up in court and tell the truth, Brendan Banfield got on top of his wife and stabbed her 7 times. All 7 wounds were in her neck. Then he shot Joseph Ryan. What came next was the staging. The act of a man who had thought about this carefully. He opened the gun safe so it looked like he had grabbed the weapon in a frantic rush. He took Christine's blood and transferred it onto Ryan's body. Every detail arranged to support a story he had already written in his head. Juliana called 911. She hung up. She called again. She hung up again. On the 3rd call, she stayed on the line. Then Brendan Banfield called 911 with the version of events he had prepared. He said he came home and found a man attacking his wife. He said he acted in self-defense. He said he was a husband who had done what he had to do. It was a performance built on months of planning, delivered in real time over a 911 line. Police arrived to a scene that told a coherent story on the surface, but surfaces crack. Early in the investigation, detectives noticed something in the master bedroom. On the nightstand, the same nightstand Christine Banfield would have looked at every morning when she woke up, there was a framed photograph. Not of Brendan and Christine, of Brendan and Juliana. The digital trail did the rest. Christine Banfield, investigators found, had no history with FetLife, no prior account, no browsing history, no connection to the site at all. But the Anastasia 9 profile had been created on the same day her bathing suit photo was downloaded from Facebook and edited. The devices used to communicate with Joseph Ryan traced back to the Banfield home, and the activity logs placed Brendan and Juliana at those devices during windows when Christine was elsewhere. Confirmed by geolocation data, the catfishing account, the months of messages, the recruitment, the staging. One by one it mapped back to the same 2 people who were supposed to be the survivors. September 2023, 7 months after the murders, Brendan Banfield was arrested. Juliana Perez Magalhaes was arrested in October. Juliana had been charged with 2nd-degree murder. She accepted a deal, plead guilty to manslaughter, testify fully against Brendan, and receive a sentencing recommendation of time served. She took it. The trial opened January 13th, 2026 in Fairfax County Circuit Court. Juliana took the stand first. She walked the jury through everything from the beginning, the first time Brendan said he wanted Christine gone, through the FetLife scheme, through the vetting of candidates, through that morning in February 2023. She told the courtroom that she watched Brendan get on top of Christine and drive a knife into her neck. She had been standing in that house. She had seen it happen. Then Brendan Banfield took the stand in his own defence. He admitted the affair. He confirmed it started in August 2022, but he told the jury he had no knowledge of any catfishing scheme, no role in any plot. His version of the morning of February 24th was this. He came home and found Joseph Ryan attacking Christine. He grabbed his gun, he shot Ryan to protect his wife, and in her final moments, Christine told him she was sorry and that she loved him. The lead prosecutor, Jenna Sands, had one response to that account. Christine Banfield had been stabbed 7 times in the neck. When exactly did those other wounds happen? The knife is inside of her hair, Banfield said from the stand. Can't tell the movement. I can't tell how that is. The jury of 5 men and 7 women began deliberating on a Friday afternoon. On Monday, February 2nd, 2026, they came back. Guilty on all 4 counts. 2 counts of aggravated murder, a firearms offence, and child endangerment because his 4-year-old daughter had been in that house while he killed 2 people. Brendan Banfield showed no emotion as the verdict was read. His attorneys filed a motion to vacate the convictions, arguing the investigation had been compromised. The judge denied it. On June 6, 2026, just days ago, Brendan Banfield stood before Chief Fairfax Circuit Court Judge Penny Ascarity for sentencing. He addressed the courtroom first. He said he had been wrongly convicted. He said detectives had suppressed evidence. He said he did not commit this crime, and he intended to keep fighting. Judge Ascarity looked directly at him. "The disregard of the life of your wife, someone who you supposedly loved," she said, "is almost unfathomable." She called his actions evil and calculated, and said they were among the worst she had encountered in her years on the bench. Brendan Banfield was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Juliana Perez Magalhaes was sentenced separately to 10 years. The Commonwealth Attorney for Fairfax County, Steve Toscano, said this outside the courtroom after the verdict in February. "I hope he thinks about his wife in jail and about what a heinous thing he did, because that's something he's rightfully going to have to live with for the rest of his life." There are two people in this story who did absolutely nothing wrong. Joseph Ryan was 39 years old. He loved animals. He was close to his family. He was selected not because of who he was, but because of what he was willing to do and what that could be used for. He drove to a stranger's house in good faith. He had been chosen as the fall guy in a plan he didn't know existed, for a murder he had no connection to, by people who had been carefully managing his perception of reality for over a month. He never had a chance. That is not a figure of speech. He genuinely, structurally, never had a chance. And Christine Banfield saved children for a living. She spent her shifts fighting for kids who were fighting to survive. She went home to a husband and a daughter, and a life she believed was real. She took a photo, a private moment, shared with her husband because he was her husband, and that photo was downloaded by him, edited by him, and posted on a website to draw in the man who was supposed to take the blame for her death. The intimacy she freely offered him, he repurposed it as a tool to end her life. Think about what that means. Think about what it means to live in a house with someone who has already decided you are going to die, to sleep beside them, to raise a child with them, to trust them with the ordinary details of your life, your phone, your laptop, a photo you sent because you loved them. There is a photograph that investigators found sitting on the nightstand in the Banfield master bedroom, the same nightstand she looked at every morning. It was a picture of her husband and the woman he had decided would replace her. She had no idea. Christine Banfield deserved a life that matched the care she gave to others. She deserved to grow old. She deserved the truth from the one person in her life she had every reason to trust with it. Rest in peace, Christine Banfield, and rest in peace, Joseph Ryan. Both of you deserved so much better than the ending you were given. If this case left you with that particular feeling, the one that settles in when you realise the most dangerous place in someone's story, subscribe to Noctis Crimes. Leave a comment telling me the detail that hit you hardest. And stay close, because the next case is already coming.